Today's episode is sponsored by Jam.com, the perfect last-minute holiday gift for your kids or grandkids. The courses at Jam.com are project-based, creative, and fun. I'll tell you more about it at the end of the show and give you a code to save $50 off a course or gift card. Today, December 22nd, 2017, we have reached the number 6 episode of the year. Get motivated to do project-based learning right with Ross Cooper.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Happy Monday Motivation. We're talking to Ross Cooper, author of Hacking Project-Based Learning, about how we can get motivated to rock project-based learning in our classrooms. So, Ross, what's new and different, and how can we hack project-based learning?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about project-based learning, sometimes it's like really abstract. It's like, maybe we've heard about it. There's a teacher down the hallway who's doing this great job with it. And you're like, how the heck did that happen? So what we tried to do in our book, and that's the book that I co-authored with Erin Murphy, who's now a middle school assistant principal. What we really tried to do is break it down. And as much as possible, we'll give teachers a step-by-step process in regards to how it can be done. So rather than looking at it abstractly, we hack it by looking at the different components and focusing on those.
Well, sometimes people say, oh, that's a project. And, what are they learning? So what's your advice so how we can get motivated to do project-based learning that really works?
One of the ways is looking at it as sometimes when we think about project-based learning, we think about it in terms of black and white, Vicki. So it's like either we're not doing it and we are doing it. So when we look at those different components of project-based learning, it might be creating a culture of inquiry, explicitly teaching collaboration skills, giving effective feedback. These are all things that could take place with or without full-blown project-based learning, right? It's just best practice and best learning that's in the best interest of our students. So I think when a lot of times when teachers see like the different components of project-based learning, when it's broken down for them, it's really motivating because it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm already doing part of that. Like that's already taking place in my classroom. My students are benefiting from this. We're already on the way there. We just need to fine tune what we're doing a little bit to make it full-blown PBL. And I think for a lot of teachers, that's really motivating because you're not really throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? It's not one of those things where we're like, everything you've been doing for the past 5 years is wrong. You need to do this instead. It's like, no, you're doing a lot of things right. We just need to tweak it to promote more inquiry, to promote more students that are learning, and to promote more relevant learning for our students.
So you're trying to get past I've seen projects where people just they're copying from Wikipedia or they're just searching and pasting facts on a page. You're really trying to get past that and asking us, are we promoting inquiry? Are we promoting collaboration? Are we really having effective feedback? Is that where you're trying to go with this?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times when I first started doing project-based learning professional development about a handful of years ago, it was kind of this whole idea of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, like I just said. It was, okay, this is what project-based learning is. This is what we're going to shoot for. And what I have found is, and you hinted at this, Vicki, is the difference between projects and project-based learning. A lot of teachers are already doing projects, right? So if we just make it very clear, okay, you're doing projects, here's what project-based learning is. Let's build on on top of what you're already doing. So we go from projects to PBL. You're being respectful of what the teacher's already doing. You're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and you're meeting them where they are. So in short, the difference between projects and project-based learning, and you mentioned this, is inquiry, right? Rather than covering content, it's this uncovering of content, which then leads to a deeper understanding. But also with a project, the traditional project, it's like the cherry on top, right?
Yeah.
As a result of that, it's like, okay, good job. Now you get to make a poster or website or a hanger mobile, whatever product it might be. And maybe you have everybody in the classroom making the same product. Whereas if it's project-based learning, you're learning through the project. So by the time that project in itself is the learning, that is the unit. And by the time students and teachers are done with it, the learning has taken place.
Okay. Could you give me an example of a project versus project-based learning?
The project-based learning experience that we talk about in the book is students building pinball machines. So they learn about electricity and magnetism and force and motion while building pinball machines. So we went out to Home Depot, we got electrical circuits, we got wires, we got bulbs, we got wood, we used drills, hammers, all that great stuff. And we built pinball machines while learning about electricity and magnetism and force and motion. So they did lots of these little mini experiments, some of which were taken from the textbook, but because they were done within the context of that pinball machine, that authentic context, it was that much more powerful for them. And I think, that's diving into STEM a little bit, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So rather than getting kind of, there's sometimes you see these STEM activities. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but sometimes when you see those STEM activities, it's like STEM in a box, right?
Yeah.
And it's like these step-by-step directions, and it's like it's errorless, right? If you follow these directions, you're going to have this great finished product, and then the emphasis is on the product and not the process. So I think sometimes we have to be careful of those, those STEM in a box activities, or at least reinvent them to promote inquiry. So that's an example of a project-based learning experience, and anything could be a project, the traditional project that we've done. So a lot of times when I'm doing professional development on PBL, we use the brochure. So it's like, this traditional travel brochure. Okay, now that we've learned about this state, now that we've researched it, we're going to kind of what you alluded to, we're going to copy and paste all this information into a brochure to show off our fancy products for maybe like Meet the Teacher Night or Open House or something like that. And really all it is, it's an information dump, right? You're taking information from one place, you're putting it into another. And it looks great, but really, did it promote much thought on the part of the student?
Okay, what are some questions that teachers can ask themselves to kind of help themselves move from projects to project-based learning? What should we, when we look at our work for this upcoming school year, what should we be asking ourselves so that we can get further and better? Because, I think we're all shifting to where we want to help kids think and not just regurgitate, right?
Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes, even when we, you hit the nail right in the head, we're delivering this professional development. It's like, okay, we need to get our students to think, right? And it's like, we're not really being clear, and we think we are, but we're really not. And so sometimes we have to be even more explicit. I call it being explicit about being explicit. We need to dig down deeper and be as explicit as possible to give those key strategies. So I think something to think about is, about a month or so ago, I was in a teacher's classroom, and it was a science teacher. He was a great teacher, and he was doing a science experiment with his students. And he said to the students, as a result of doing this experiment, you're going to find out X, Y, and Z. So immediately, kind of the inquiry more or less is sucked out of the project. It's sucked out of the experiment or the unit, or whatever he's doing, because he's telling students what they're going to understand. So that's the definition of coverage rather than uncovering the content. So sometimes it's just a matter that those entry points and getting ready for PBL or inquiry is just shifting the order in which we do things. So rather than telling students as a result of this experiment or as a result of this unit or activity, you're going to find this out, it's shifting the order and putting that purposeful play first, letting the students engage in that productive struggle first, then coming together. And that could be scary too, right? Because that could be scary because, that productive struggle, some students aren't used to it. And maybe even more significantly, some teachers aren't used to it. So if a teacher is going to do that, it's important to convey to your students, okay, this productive struggle is a part of the learning process. It doesn't mean that you're messing up. But putting that productive struggle first and then taking that direct instruction and moving it to the back.
Well, they tell us to share our essential questions, but it sounds like maybe in that case, a teacher may have shared the essential answers, right?
Exactly. So and I think anytime you could turn the ownership over to the students, it's a great thing. So even when you're crafting the essential questions, as you get more and more comfortable with it, even when I taught fourth grade, by the end of the year, my students would be crafting those essential questions. They would all come up with these essential questions, and then they'd plug them into a Google form, and then we'd have a vote as to which one was the best for the respective unit. But I think really thinking about the order in which we do things and moving that discussion and that direct instruction to the back as far as possible is really a great thing to do. And even when we're doing professional development with teachers, I always say no teacher said they wanted to make a shift because, insert famous researcher here said so, right? Uh-huh. You shift because you feel that it's what's best for your students, and then maybe the research comes after. But if you're doing PD and you're leading with that direct instruction or you're leading with that research, you're going to get a lot of bored and teachers who probably don't want to move forward.
So Ross, give us a 30-second pep talk about why we as teachers should shift from projects to project-based learning.
When you think about all these things that we focus on in school, there's this whole idea of initiative fatigue, right? We're stuck with one initiative after the other, after the other, after the other. And really, everybody can be fatigued, from the administrators down to the students. But when you think about this hard-hitting instructional approach and hard-hitting learning strategy that encompasses so much, all with this great context, it really is project-based learning. You've got the 4 C's in critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication that everybody talks about. Like I said before, you have feedback, you have learning spaces, you have like publishing, formative assessment, powerful mini lessons, all these great things that are really wrapped up into one approach. And once you learn how to do it, once you learn how to plan with a unit perspective in mind, using PBL rather than a lesson by lesson perspective, you're never going to want to go back to the way that you taught before, because it puts the students at the center of the learning, and ultimately it's what's best for them.
So the book is Hacking Project-Based Learning. We'll be doing an ebook giveaway. So check the show notes and enter to win, and share this show and comment. And we all really need to be motivated to think about the difference this week between, are we just doing projects? Are we truly moving to project-based learning? Because the difference is remarkable. Today's sponsor is Jam.com. At Jam, kids aged 7 through 16 can take cool courses like the Secrets of Drawing, Invention courses, how to build anything with Legos, and even how to host your own Minecraft video show. This week, I spent some time looking at these amazing courses, and I love what I have seen. It has project-based courses for kids with experts from many exciting fields. So think about mad science experiments with Nat Geo stars, or learning drawing techniques from a professional artist. So you can get $50 off any course or gift card at jam.com with the code COOLCAT50. That's COOLCAT50 at jam.com. This is just in time for the perfect gift and a wonderful way to spend all that out of school time learning and having fun, like learning should be.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.